The devolvement of the American right into an autocratic movement in line with other autocratic movements in the world takes a big step this week. One of the loudest, most prominent voices on Fox News, Tucker Carlson, opened his show on Monday like this.
If you care about Western civilization and democracy and families, and the ferocious assault on all three of those things by the leaders of our global institutions, you should know what is happening here right now.
Here is Budapest, Hungary, where Carlson is broadcasting his show from all week, and near where he'll speak at a right-wing conference this weekend. Carlson also met with the country's Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, a leader he has praised profusely in the past. Orban known for his autocratic practices. About Carlson's celebration of Orban, the Washington Post notes, quote, Carlson, of course, has said next to nothing about the autocratic character of Orban's rule, which critics on both sides of the Atlantic cast as a cautionary tale of how democracies backslide. To a certain extent, that should be expected. After all, Orbanism represents the fever dream of the American right. The Hungarian prime minister rules a government steadily captured through gerrymandering and a stacked judiciary. Sound familiar? The overwhelming majority of media outlets are now loyal to him, while he presides over a network of patronage and alleged graft that ties in many of the country's titans of industry. Joining our conversation, Mark Leibovich, chief national correspondent for the New York Times, and an MSNBC contributor. Frank Figliuzzi still here. Mark, I thought of you and I have spent a lot of time me working for and you covering John McCain, and I thought of the old Republican Party. And John McCain obviously isn't with us. He's thrashing around in his grave as he watches his party now align itself with the same dictators he fought against. But I wonder what you make of it, that there's just not a peep from the Mitch McConnells or the Rob Portmans, or there's no one rebuking Tucker Carlson for wrapping both arms and both legs around Viktor Orban this week.
Yeah, you don't even expect it anymore. I mean, at least a few years ago, you'd have a few outliers, you'd have a few, people shaking their fists, and you'd have people asking the questions, and at the very least you'd have, a lot of Republicans sort of running in the other direction, right? Not wanting to offend Donald Trump for his latest, or by critiquing his latest tweet or whatever. I mean, I think what's very interesting when you sort of look at Hungary is, Hungary is sort of an exaggerated version of, to some degree, what Donald Trump would love to see in America as far as the media control. I read a statistic earlier that said like 90% of the media outlets are somehow in the control of President Orban. And obviously Fox News is one cable news outlet. It's a very powerful one, but it's also spread to, things like Newsmax and One America, Facebook. There's like a hammerlock on the right into some very significant areas, talk radio and so forth. So, you just don't, it's very protective of a conservative leader like Donald Trump with autocratic tendencies to have the protection of a lot of far-right media outlets. And I guess in some ways, Tucker Carlson is trying to import, that sympathy across the ocean. And, it's unclear what he's doing, but I think it's a pretty clear synergy right now. And, again, like you said, you don't hear a lot of critique about it.
Frank, it's got a through line to the assault on the rule of law, which you didn't hear much protest from the Republican Party. Secretary Mattis resigned from his post as Secretary of the Defense Department when we left our Kurdish allies to die in Syria. Not much from the American right, never mind describing press as enemy of the people, most of the leaders of the Justice Department and FBI as enemies of the state and accusing them of treason. What do we need to do to stop what Colonel Vindman described as slippage of our democracy, or is it too late?
So the first half of the battle is recognizing the threat and the risk. And I don't think most Americans understand the gravity of this situation. And I kind of view it as my mission as a national security contributor for this network to point out threat and risk. I'm not here to critique another network. I'm not here to critique Tucker Carlson, who should be very grateful the freedoms we enjoy as Americans that allow him to travel wherever he wants, hold whatever beliefs he wants to, and resist any pressure, free of pressure as a media member on his particular show. Ironically, he's chosen to set up shop this week in a nation that increasingly stands for none of that and has wrapped itself in white identity movement, nationalism, anti-refugee. Here's where I'm going to point this out so that people can do that first half of the battle, recognize the threat. This is where this goes, and it's not pretty. This leads to demonization of the other. Hungary right now is about white identity, nationalism, and hatred of the other. People who don't look like them, people who don't speak or worship like them. They've wrapped it in Christianity and family values. You heard that in the clip you played of Tucker's opening comments, right? But that's how this works. And it's happening here and now. And so we need to understand America's going to decide what it wants to be when it grows up, but does it want to be the country that doesn't welcome people like my grandparents into the country, doesn't stand for the inscription on the Statue of Liberty, doesn't welcome anyone anymore that doesn't look or talk like us? Hungary would likely not allow Tucker Carlson to immigrate to Hungary. He possesses no particular skill sets. He's of no value to them. They wouldn't want him. Is that the country that we want to establish?